Hey there, how there, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to yet another Cutter Top 10 NFL video. And today we're going to be looking at the top 10 NFL finishes of all time. Like finishing plays. So it's not regular season finishes, but it's like, finishes from pretty much playoff games and like super plays and all that. So here we go. Our first one is number 10, the originator, in a sense, of a certain play. Cowboys Vikings 75 NFC divisional round. So Minnesota seemed to be the class of the NFC Central, and they got to host the divisional round game against the NFC East champion Dallas Cowboys. So the Cowboys and Vikings were battling tooth and nail. It was, if I remember correctly, 17-14 Vikings, and the Cowboys down the field from the 50-yard line with about 30 seconds left. Roger Staubach threw a hanging ball that Drew Pearson caught the ball between two Viking defenders and scored a touchdown. However, what is lost in this is that allegedly Drew Pearson had pushed off on one of the Vikings defenders, Nate Wright, to make the catch, and that's when the Hail Mary was put in the lexicon. Unfortunately, though, Viking fans were pissed off and threw bottles onto the field, and one struck the field judge. I mean, you can't blame Vikings fans for that because, I mean, the Hail Mary should have been called back on offensive pass interference. If there was instant replay at that time, you definitely would have seen that. But yeah, Pearson kind of pushed off. The joke was on the Cowboys. I mean, at least the Steelers beat them in the Super Bowl. So yeah. Number 9 is the only regular season game on this list, and it's the River City Relay Saints Jaguars 2003. So the Saints were hanging on for their playoff lives. It was the second last game of the season, if memory serves me right. And what ended up happening was that Saints were trying to keep their playoff hopes alive against the Jaguars, and then Aaron Brooks threw it to Dante Stallworth, and there would be laterals, and Canadian Jerome Payton got the ball into the end zone touchdown. So the Saints had tied it. Well, actually, that touchdown meant that they needed the field goal, the extra point to tie it. And it was funny because the one guy had in the Jaguars end zone, like the Jaguars stands, had the thing with the arrow pointing one side, and then when John Kearney, who seems to be a good accurate kicker, missed the extra point, the guy slyly decides to turn the sign the other way, and that was just horrible. Kearney missed the extra point. The Saints missed the playoffs, and it was just like all that lateral action for naught. Also in 2003, and this did not make the list, the next week was the Vikings taking on the Cardinals when the Vikings forced the Cardinals into fourth and forever. And Josh McCown managed to throw a ball straight for Nate Poole, who made the catch. He didn't have 2 feet in the end zone, but there's an NFL. There was a rule that if he was seen to be pushed out by the defender and he would have made the catch in bounds, they call it. And Paul Allen for the Vikings radio network said, touchdown! No! No! They score! I think it was Nate Poole. And it was like it crushed Vikings' hopes because they started 6-0. They ended up 8-8. The Packers beat the Broncos on the final day to win the NFC North. And when the Packers hosted the Falcons in the NFC playoff game, which saw the Falcons become the first team to win a playoff game at Lambeau Field, first opposing team to do so. They gave Nate Poole the key to Green Bay and had him join as a special guest to watch the football game. He actually was in the press boxes, but then he decided to join the real fans. That's cool. Number 8 is the only one that involves my New England Patriots, the Tuck Rule game. Fortunately, though, is it? Yeah, there was talk about the 28-3 game being finished, but that was just a massive choke and all that. It wasn't like a defining play and all that. But yeah, the Tech Real game was more defining. It was the 2001 AFC divisional round. The Raiders would take on the Patriots, who somehow won the AFC East despite starting 0-2 and Drew Bledsoe being drilled by Mo Lewis. Why am I saying Mo Collins? Sorry. Mo Lewis, and then that got Tom Brady, an unproven second-year quarterback, to be the main guy, and he led the Pats to win the division. They got the 2 seed. They got to host the Raiders in the divisional round. It would actually be the last game at Foxborough Stadium. People forget about that because the Patriots played at Foxborough Stadium before Gillette Stadium, and this would be the last game at Foxborough no matter what, unless the Steelers choked the next day, because then the Patriots would have been the home team for the AFC title game. But it ended up being the last game at Foxborough. So anyway, the Patriots and Raiders rallying. The Raiders thought they won the game on a fumble by Tom Brady, and it was recovered by the Raiders. However, the referee said that Brady's hand was going forward and all that, but he was pulling it back. He was going to run with it. But they call it an incomplete pass, and the little known tuck rule, the tuck rule, actually was in the NFL books at the time, but now that was taken away. But practically, that gave the game alive. Now everyone thinks that was, yeah, it was controversial, and the Raiders got skunked again. But let's not forget, Adam Vinatieri could have easily choked on the 2 field goals to tie the game and win the game in overtime. He could have choked because of how snowy it really was. He could have easily missed the ball end over end in the snowy Foxborough Stadium and missed it wide left or wide right. And then we wouldn't be talking about this Tuck Rule game at all. It'd be like a lucky break for the Raiders. But yeah, Vinatieri did the snowy game tying and game winning kicks. They had to go to Pittsburgh. Brady was hurt. Bledsoe had to finish the game in Pittsburgh, and they won. It wouldn't be the last time New England would screw over Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh in the AFC title game. A few years later, they would do the same thing. And the Patriots won the Super Bowl against the Rams. I honestly thought the Rams were going to beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. But Adam Vinatieri and Tom Brady proved me wrong. Number 7 is the Miracle of the Meadowlands times 2. So Giants and Eagles were battling each other. The first attack was 1978 at the old Meadowlands, aka the old Giants Stadium. At the time, the Giants had Giants Stadium all themselves. The Jets were playing at Shea Stadium. Bet you didn't know that. But yeah, so the Eagles and Giants would face each other. The Eagles thought they had choked their playoff chances with a loss to the Giants. And then after Bill Bergey ran into the Giants center and ran into Joe Pisarcik, that caused a lot of friction. Pisarcik was ready to hand out to Larry Csonka, who was on the Giants at the time. But there was a bad exchange, especially with Pisarcik. And then Herman Edwards, yes, that Herman Edwards, you play to win the game, came up with the ball, scooped it up and scored, and the Eagles won the game and got to the 78 playoffs, if memory serves me right. The Giants basically had to fire their head coach and offensive coordinator for that stuff, and then it kind of started the tradition of kneeling on the ground to win the game and all that. You rarely saw that in pre-78, pre-Miracle of the Meadowlands. What's funny is Joe Pisarcik became the backup to Ron Jaworski in the 1980 Eagles season that they went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Raiders. Anyway, later on in 2010, the Eagles would face the Giants at the new Meadowlands, aka MetLife, where the Giants and Jets would share stadium. The Giants had a chance to knock out the Eagles. The Eagles were actually down by 21 at one point, tied the game, and then the Giants went to try to punt, and the Eagles would fumble it and maybe go to overtime. However, DeSean Jackson actually did make a boo-boo on the punt return, but managed to scoop it up himself, and then he ran into the end zone and basically walked backwards into the end zone, and Tom Coughlin giving it to the punter. So anyway, DeSean Jackson's walk-off punt return touchdown, which is a rarity. I don't know if there's ever been one other than DeSean Jackson, but anyway, the medical at the New Meadowlands was just as brutal as the other one. Okay. Number 6 is the Minneapolis Miracle Vikings Saints 2017 NFC Divisional. So this was the game at US Bank Stadium. I thought the Saints were going to beat the Vikings, even though the Vikings were the home team. I'm like, it's the Vikings. They always find a way to choke. And the Saints were that close. They were up by, I think, 3 or something like that. And the Saints looked good. I thought Drew Brees had done it again. But then the Vikings, with Case Keenum, I think it was, he threw a wild ball to Stephon Diggs. the trouble was the New Orleans defender actually trying to meet up with Stefan Diggs to knock the ball loose. If the defender had stood his ground and stayed behind the line and forced Diggs and tackled Diggs inbounds, the Vikings would have been almost, the clock would have almost ran out. The Vikings would have needed a field goal, I think, to tie. But yeah, Stefan Diggs managed to catch the ball, stay in bounds, and score the touchdown. It was a walk-off touchdown. It was amazing. It was actually the first postseason game in NFL history to end on a regulation touchdown. I could have sworn there was more. But yeah, that was just crazy what happened. And the Minneapolis Miracle, and the Vikings took care of the Saints. A few years later, the Vikings would go into New Orleans and beat the Saints on an overtime touchdown. So yeah, if only that New Orleans defender stayed where the hell he was. Number 5 is the crazy 13 seconds between the Chiefs and Bills for the 2021 AFC Divisional. I know a lot of people are going to kill me saying that should be higher, but the rest, it's historic. Anyway, Buffalo and Kansas City always going tooth and nail in the playoffs against each other. Buffalo was hoping to take down Kansas City. They thought after a Josh Allen touchdown, they were going to screw the Chiefs over in 13 seconds. Somehow, in some freaking way, Patrick Mahomes managed to throw a couple of long balls, get enough of a timeout, and get them to field goal range, tying the game, and then winning in overtime. It was like, how the hell did that happen? That the Chiefs and Bills, the Bills were 13 seconds away from winning the game, and they choked it. I mean, it's kind of like, was it like 2025 season that they had it against the Broncos and they choked? I don't know. I hate the Bills. Sorry, I'm a Pats fan. What do you expect? Number 4 is the Music City Miracle. Speaking of the Bills getting screwed over. Anyhow, so the Music City Miracle happened. This was the 99 AFC wildcard. This was actually the first game played in the I can't say the new millennium because that's 2001. In the first playoff game in the 21st century. Well, the first football game in the 21st century. Y2K scared people so much the NFL didn't want to put games on New Year's Day 2000 and all that for the playoffs. I think that would have forced the Rose Bowl to be. No, the Rose Bowl had to be played on a Saturday in 2000 because that was the rule. But yeah, it got them to move the AFC wildcard game to July the 8th. To January the 8th. So the first postseason game in the 21st century was the Titans and Bills. Steve Christie kicked a seemingly winning field goal, and it looked good for Buffalo to win the game in Tennessee. Now, Tennessee was actually 13-3 and made the wild card. And people are like, how the hell do you win 13 games and go to the wild card game? Simple, because the team above them, they didn't win the division. The team above them, Jacksonville, won 14 games in that season. So that forced the 13-3 Titans into the wild card. I actually thought Buffalo was going to beat Tennessee. Unfortunately, though, Wade Phillips made the stupidest mistake, giving Rob Johnson the ball instead of Doug Flutie. Imagine if Doug Flutie had some impact in that Titans-Bills game. It was kind of weird because 6 years earlier, the 92-93 AFC wildcard game wins when the Titans, as they were formerly known as the Houston Oilers, went into Buffalo, had a 35-3 lead, and choked it massively. But yeah, Buffalo seemingly wanted. Steve Christie decided to kick it short to force Tennessee to take the ball, and then they made a few plays, and then Dyson threw the ball backwards to Frank Wycheck, allegedly, or Wycheck to Dyson. But the ball seemed to go forwards at the line. It had to be a straight line backwards, but it seemed to go forwards. And the Titans got the touchdown. Phil Luckett looked at it and said, no, there's no bad plays and all that. And the Titans beat the Bills. And the worst part for Buffalo is this was the last playoff game they had till 2018, for 18 years. Can you imagine? 18 freaking years. I mean, Buffalo Sabre fans didn't have to wait that long. The Sabres had to wait 15 years to get a playoff spot this year, but in 2026, but 18 years. Wow. And the Bills only got into that 2017-18 playoffs because they won and the Bengals shocked the Ravens in Baltimore, so much so that Buffalo fans gave Andy Dalton's charity many gift baskets and upwards of $2 million for knocking out the Ravens. But yeah, The Titans would use this game to their advantage. They would face the Jaguars in the AFC title game and beat Jacksonville in Jacksonville to go to the Super Bowl, where they were 1 yard short to the Rams. So there was karma. But what was even more crazy is people forget that Titans team, yeah, they were 13-3. What about the Jaguars? They were 14-2. The Jaguars beat the Dolphins in the AFC divisional round, of course. They were 15-3 combined with the playoffs. All 3 losses were to the Titans. They were undefeated against any team not named Tennessee. Crazy stat, but it's true. Number 3 is The Catch. Niners Cowboys 81 NFC title game. This was classic. This was amazing. The Niners and Cowboys would battle each other, renewing old hostilities and all that. Vin Scully and Hank Stram would call the game for CBS. A lot of people were like, why not Summerall and Madden? Well, because Vin Scully was going to move from CBS to NBC to be the baseball star for Game of the Week. So they gave Vin Scully the NFC title game as a parting gift. Don't worry, Summerall and Madden did do Super Bowl 16, Niners Bengals. But yeah, the Niners and Cowboys. The Cowboys looked pretty good too, going to San Francisco and shock the Niners. They had done that a couple times in the 70s. However, on 3rd and 5 with 56 seconds left, Joe Montana floated a ball so high up that only Joy Clark in a 6'5" frame could make the catch, the fingertip catch into the end zone, touchdown, and the Niners had a 28-27 lead. What people forget is that was not the end of it. The Cowboys could have made the catch obsolete. They were marching down the field to try to get Septian in range for the winning field goal. However, Danny White made a massive fumble at midfield, and the Niners caught the ball, and that was it. So yeah, so that was crazy. Number 2 is one of the classics, the Ice Bowl, Packers Cowboys 67 NFL Championship. This was before AFC, NFC was a twinkle in everyone's eye. When the NFL and the AFL, or the American Football League, were different leagues, and the winners of each would be going to the Super Bowl. Now, what people screw up from this, misremember, is that this Ice Bowl game did not decide the NFL spot for Super Bowl 1. That was Super Bowl 2. Packers and Cowboys met on New Year's Eve 1967 for the NFL Championship, and then, of course, a couple of weeks later, they would fight for the Super Bowl against the AFC champion, the AFL champion, which was the Raiders. So, in one of the coldest days on record, I think it is the coldest with wind chill factors, even beating the Freezer Bowl in 1982 between the Chargers and Bengals. This was really cold and all that. The Packers people. Vince Lombardi didn't want them to have heaters or wear gloves. However, the African American players wore brown gloves because, well, they think it would blend in, and it worked. So yeah, so the Cowboys and Packers were battling each other. Bully Bob Hayes would have to run down for routes with his hands in his pockets. But anyway, yeah, the Cowboys were winning over the Packers. And then Bart Starr at the 2-yard line with 17 seconds left had the quarterback sneak, the presence of mind, the quarterback sneak into the end zone, touchdown, and the Packers beat the Cowboys for the second straight year to win the NFL championship. People forget that the Packers and Cowboys met in 1966, the previous year, in Dallas, of all places, for the chance to go to Super Bowl 1. But yeah, the Ice Bowl cemented the Packers as being a great team, although it would take them 29 years to win another title, the Super Bowl, that is. And number 1, who can forget the Immaculate Reception? Steelers Raiders. We can thank that Sharon woman who actually called into Myron Cope's post-game show with the whole thing about the Immaculate Reception because of the Jesus and the Immaculate Conception. Nevertheless, Steelers and Raiders would meet in the 1972 AFC Divisional Round. Steelers were in trouble. They were down 7-0 on a 7-6 on a touchdown run by Ken Stabler, which was, I think, 50 yards. And then the Steelers had 4th and 10, and they needed to convert, or else it was curtains, so the Raiders were going to the AFC title game. However, Terry Bradshaw threw a ball that seemingly got deflected, and Franco Harris managed to pick it up off his shoe tips, if you will, and and scored the touchdown down the left-hand side, and the Steelers won. It actually took half an hour for the officials to officially count it as a touchdown because instant replay wasn't around at the time, and they were milling around and all that. It's one of the most debated and iconic finishes in NFL history. For one thing, was the deflection off the Oakland defender, or was Jack Tatum, or was it off the Steelers receiver Frenchie Fuqua before it hit before Franco Harris caught it? The worst part is when NFL films showed that stuff, you cannot see where Franco Harris catch the ball. Was it off the turf, or was it was just conveniently out of frame? So yeah, that was kind of the crazy part of the whole thing was the where the ball was and who it deflect off. NFL rules at the time before they changed in 1978 said that no offensive player could touch the ball. No two guys can consecutively get the ball. If it deflects off an offensive player, it has to go off a defensive player or of course being incomplete. So if it hit Fuqua and then Harris got the ball, that would have been an illegal play. But they didn't. They tried. I think they talked about it, but it was a touchdown by Franco Harris. The Steelers would end up losing to the Miami Dolphins. Of course, that was the year the Dolphins went perfecto. Raider fans for years have said that they've been cheated. There was even that Steelers Raiders AFC title game at Three Rivers after an ice storm that basically they iced the middle of the field on purpose so that the Raiders receivers couldn't run their patterns. And of course, that whole thing with the Broncos in the 1977-78 AFC title game in Denver, that they seemingly got a scoop and score for a touchdown, but nope, they called the Denver player down at the one, which was wrong. And then a few other plays like the Tech World game. So get it over, Raiders. You've won 3 freaking Super Bowls, so shut it. Buffalo Bill fans ain't complaining, and they've never won a Super Bowl. So there. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm Jeff Diamond.